Yo gamers, what's up? It's Golden12 here with my shoddy green screen talking about the game state for a little bit here. That's what I yap about today. Defense characters are in a really weird position. Now I'm going to be using this website for reference today as it has information that is a little bit different than the other sites that I typically use. And also I'm going to have to cover the screen in a couple of cases because I don't exactly want to risk anything if you know what I mean, but this pertains mainly to the two current defense characters, are the ones we're gonna get, Seth and Ben, right? In terms of like how they function, because if we're being real here, defense characters are in a really weird spot, and it doesn't look so good in terms of aging. However, having seen what Seth does, I think he's a really strong unit, and so I do want to talk about that a little bit and like the potential for a five-star defense character as we're obviously going to get one. Right now, we don't have one, and there's not even a five-star weapon at all, right? So, just wanted to talk about that. And additionally, the main thing contributing towards the iffy state of defense characters is how unimpactful their weapons are, and the fact that right now they primarily scale on defense. Now, Ben kind of gets a exception out of this because his defense gets converted into his attack, which does help him with his actual damage multipliers and as well as helping him build up fire anomaly so it doesn't do well negative damage to the zero damage it already does. But you get what I'm saying. He also provides other bonuses like the crit, which is pretty nice, and the shield. So again, Ben does have some sauce, but it doesn't help him from the fact that defense characters are in a really weird spot. So the main thing with defense characters being in a weird spot is their weapons. Their weapons are realistically not all that impactful. If we take a look at this one, for example, right, it's giving you HP attack, and it's going to give you a HP increase and then impact whenever you get hit. Which, first off, a hit requirement is almost always going to be a problem in games because that is something that you can't rely on for a lot of things. Like you can stun lock the enemy in some cases if they're small enemies, or a boss. You're gonna parry them, or do whatever, right? So you can't realistically rely on a passive like this. It's also giving you two stats that right now are completely pointless. Nobody cares about HP in this game. Like there's not an HP scaling character, and so this is not doing anything. Even though this is like an in battle passive, and so realistically this is an insane like stat boost for HP. This right now does nothing, right? And so when you're looking at a character like Ben or Seth, right, why would you ever run this on one of these characters? Doesn't make any sense. Again, if we move on to the next one, this one, this one's giving you defense percent, which, good amount, obviously, but it's also increasing your max HP and your attack whenever you're shielded. Well, why would a defense scaling character, and this is assuming they're purely scaling defense, Ben obviously gets conversion, want this? I don't know. Passive isn't all that impactful. Again, HP being a in battle effect here, very strong effect, but like not the most important thing. Only 10% attack. I think I'd rather run something else, right? I mean, sure, it's a good stat boost for Bennett or not Bennett, Ben if you want him to do damage, but like there really isn't much going on there. And this goes on and on. Like we look at the next two. We have the Battle Pass one. The Battle Pass one scales attack even, which first off, Seth does want to attack, right? But the crazy thing is that this is the only one that scales. This is not the only one. There's two that scale attack. The new one also does, but this one right here scales attack. But it's a battle pass locked weapon. So Seth players are already out of luck because either gonna have to summon on the beginner for Seth's new weapon, or get the battle pass because they're not gonna have a weapon that's gonna work with the character. So despite the character being good, you're out of luck because the weapon options are not good, right? And so again, you're just getting constantly shafted with these characters, despite the fact that they can actually be really good and bring value. Sure, they'll be intrinsically less valuable than a stunner that's going to have stun damage percent, but a lot of the times, for certain teams, they can take the role of a support or a stunner, right? They're very flexible units, right? Especially Seth. Uh, and Ben does have some flexibility, but like again, like it's wherever the developers want to lead into defense characters and their strengths, right? Because right now they're primarily used as stunners. Well, at least Ben is primarily used as a stunner, right? Or it's like a secondary DPS in a collated team, right? Because that's the one team that actually legitimately allows you to run dual stunner, right? So you have some options, but it's not the most flexible or valuable for an account, right? And the weapons are not helping that. And so hopefully, like in the future, defense characters obviously get more sauce for them to mess around with and do stuff. But right now, it's not really all that good, and weapons aren't even helping it, right? And there's more that I could go into about how we possibly might not ever get a healer due to the fact that in-game content is so focused on draining your HP and applying different debuffs to you. And so maybe they wouldn't give us a direct healer, or they limit the heals to a certain mode, or like something crazy like that, or like, oh, even less healing percent, right? But for me, at least, it seems like they're focusing really on temporary effects, right? To try to push the gameplay side of things, and not so much where, oh, I could sit and just tank everything, right? If that makes sense. Um, for me at least, it looks like, at least depending on whatever the content they go for, that temporary defense bonuses are what they're going to be doing. So we won't really see a healer, but we'll see more shielding characters to give you various, effectively more temporary HP, right? So that's sort of what they'll do there. But Hollow Zero focuses realistically on like making it harder for you versus sheer defense, where healing would be fine, but generally it's not necessarily needed because you can kind of just overkill for like half the floors, right? So again, weird state they're going on here. I kind of wanted to put that at the end of the video, but whatever. I've thrown it in the middle here. But continuing, again, this one is going to give you damage reduction, which again is good, but it's for that character, not the team. So it's like I don't know how much I want to run this, over another option that could be more beneficial for me, especially if it's a support effect. And of course, whenever you are attack again, a variable that's not consistent, you're gonna get energy recharge, which is a decent buff, but I just don't see why you'd run this, right? And then whenever you're off field, the buff will be transferred to the new on field character with the duration refreshed, and so on and so on. This last part where you can transfer the buff is actually the best part about this, because you can then therefore give your DPS energy recharge. And if the bonus is significant, right, which in this case it's not really, but if it was a significant enough bonus, you would be able to get another EX special, which is just going to be a nice DPS increase, right? So again, there's some sauce here, but unfortunately, there's just issues in terms of like actual gameplay and effectiveness and all that stuff, right? And then lastly, well, not lastly, sorry, there's more they go for. There's Ben's signature one, which is going to give him defense and a much higher base attack, which granted, I haven't even been looking at the base attack, but it is interesting to see that Ben's statistically just has more raw stats than every other defense like cone, which is kind of insane to think about. But yeah, his gives a lot of raw stats. So his, of course, is giving defense, very high base attack, and reducing the damage you take, as well as after being attacked, the next enemy hit will trigger a critical hit and deal 60% of the equipper's defense as additional damage once every 7.5 seconds. This will this is a fantastic damaging effect for Ben specifically and nobody else, because again, we don't have any other defense characters, and this will only happen on those that scale defense, right? It won't be as strong on a character that scales attack, right? So again, another conditional light cone, not light cone, W engine, Wengen, that is actually pretty good, but it's not the most flexible one or valuable one, overall. So again, it's just a weird problem with defense creators. Not going to look at Seth's, but this problem extends with the 3-star options. 3-star options are in a different scenario, which they're giving you much less base attack, but you're getting defense percent here, which, considering you can't have base defense on here, this is actually going to be a very competitive option for any defense scalers. And in fact, whenever you get attacked, you get defense increase. Now, granted, this on attack thing, I do not know if it procs off of parries whenever you do that, to be completely honest with you. Even if it doesn't, this is still a very competitive option for those defense scalers. But as I stated, variable that is inconsistent, it's not always going to happen, right? And then lastly, we have the identification, this pink one, which is going to give you defense percent as well. And then when attacked, it reduces the attacker's damage by 6%, or goes up to 10%. This is kind of invalidated by any of the 4-stars that give damage reduction. So not really that big. I'd probably run the one that gives me higher stats because I can get higher damage out of that. But yeah, as you can see here, none of these weapons are doing anything crazy to give you supportive effects. The one Ben's weapon is giving you nice damage on Ben specifically. It won't work well on Seth because he doesn't scale defense, right? And so on. So like, again, very, very strange scenario. These characters are in a weird spot. Like, do you run them as stunners, anomaly characters, or crit characters? Like, they're in a very strange spot right now, and they're not the most valuable, right? If you pull up tier lists, like Created One's tier list, right, where they rank the two defensive characters, are you serious? Come on, really? Okay. Well, it seems to want to stall, but here we go. Where they rank the two defensive characters like so. They're putting Kaleda, who is mainly as a stunner, into. Oh, sorry, she's not a defense character. My bad. I misspoke there. The Ben specifically with Kaleda, right? They're putting Ben down here at tier two, while every like all the stunners, right, are above him, which is very interesting because Ben can do pretty good damage. He's got good days, especially once you get dupes on him, but they're not factoring in dupes in this case. And even still, he's probably going to be lower than these other characters because besides the crit, the like shield he'll provide, which his shielding isn't going to be as strong as Seth's. Seth will have a stronger shield. Uh, what's he doing? Right? Why would you run him over a stunner who can give you some uh stun multiplier? Right? I don't know. So like, you're in this weird flex spot where they're kind of a, I wouldn't say jack of all trades, master of none, but they sort of have been spread out across multiple roles to where you know damage, anomaly, support, stun. Like, what's their focus for these characters? What they intend to do with them? I don't know. It brings in the question. It's like, why would I ever want a defense character? What's the point of something for them when I would just prefer to run a stunner in this role or a dedicated support in this other role, right? So I don't really know. It leads to a really weird position where it's like Ben in and of itself is like really strong, but all the other options are just more useful for dealing with the game's content, right? Now that being said, if they do introduce a healer, they can just say, screw it, we're gonna drop a healer. They can heal even inside of modes like Hollow Zero. It's gonna be a very valuable character because this is a permanent, consistent support buff. So for anybody who has skill issues, they're gonna probably want this character a lot more as it's gonna keep them alive, right? Versus a temporary shield from one of these other characters, right? And I would imagine their support role, or sorry, defense role specifically, because that implies that they are providing a tank role or defense, right? And so, yeah, I just think overall defense characters are in a really weird state, right? They've got a mix of roles. They potentially could be really good, but with what they do in terms of like support effects, overlaps heavily with other characters and leads it to a point to where it's like, why would I want to run this character over another character, right? Maybe in the future there's like a defense character that provides effects that are worthwhile to run over some other options. I do believe Seth actually potentially is one of those characters, but of course, as I said, he has a problem to where he's gonna want his weapon or the battle pass weapon. Nothing else on him matters, and so you're in a very, very strange predicament to where it's like you're limiting the character a lot by not having an attack scaling weapon for a defensive character who probably should have scaled defense, all things considered. But the reason he scales attack is for anomaly effects, right? Stuff going on there, but yeah, that's really all I have to say for this video. I just want to have a discussion around defense characters and why I think they're in a weird spot, right? It's sort of just like, as I've been saying, why run this when you can run that, right? Uh I do have hope for this type because if they release a 5 star, again, I hope they're cracked. Maybe they go out of line and sort of give the 5 star stun percentage, right? So that they do compete directly with stunners, where it's like, oh, maybe I do want this over a stunner, right? Or maybe they provide some other effect, which again, Seth is. I keep talking about Seth, but he does do an example of this. I'm not going to mention it specifically because leaks, but like that it could be something like that, or an even greater effect, right? Or who knows? They work as a damage dealer, right? You could have a defensive damage dealer, 100%. It just depends on how Hoyoverse wants to handle creating content and these characters. And so yeah, don't forget to comment down below, right? I want to have this discussion with people because again, as I've been saying, defense characters, weird spot in the game. No idea where Hoyo wants to take them. And right now, it's very iffy on their viability across the board and how they'll work in end content in the future, right? And so, yeah, don't forget to like, subscribe, check me out on Twitch. That'll be in the comment description down below. And I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace.